Welcome to Pennsylvania in Focus. I'm Kristen Smith. It was a full day of celebration in Harrisburg honoring the inaugurations of Treasurer Stacy Garrity, Auditor General Timothy DeFoor, and Attorney General David Sunday. This marks the first time all three row officer positions have been held by Republicans. Joining me today is the Center Square's Pennsylvania reporter, Christina Lingel. Christina, tell us a little bit about who Stacy Garrity is and what the Treasurer's Office does.
So the Treasurer's Office is in charge of the state's finances, and it oversees things like the state's investments, where pension funds are invested. So the Treasury controls how we spend the money that we collect in tax revenue. Stacy Garrity is someone, if you are familiar with her from the news, you might think she's a very political person. She's been pretty outspoken in her support for President Trump, and it's gotten into hot water for some things around that. A lot of her work as treasurer has centered around improving the state's 529 plans for college savings and working on the state's pension plans and returning unclaimed property to Pennsylvanians, which includes things like paychecks people never collected. She has made some big political moves, like following the invasion of Ukraine, she divested from Russian securities. She's also divested from Chinese investments following human rights violations and security concerns. Conversely, she invested more in Israel bonds following the October 7th attacks. So she's kind of shown an interest in the larger political sphere by making those kinds of choices. The swearing in showed a really different side of her. Her friends and family and colleagues who spoke talked about her compassion and respect. And she was known for being, I believe they called her the Angel of Bucca during her service in Iraq. So, it was pretty touching. There was a heartfelt tribute to her deceased father. And it's a very nice family sort of affair to watch her swearing in ceremony.
And what about Timothy DeFoor, our Auditor General? Tell us about him and what his office does.
So the Auditor General's office is in charge of auditing the state. DeFoor specifically has spent time investigating things like fraud in different departments. He's worked in the Inspector General's office and the Attorney General's office. And their job is to basically look at how spending is going and seeing if there's anything amiss and making sure that the state's not only spending efficiently and effectively, but also to, find and root out any kind of fraud. So DeFoor is just starting his second term in this position. He made history in his first term as being the first person of color elected to one of our row offices in the state. So that was a pretty big accomplishment that they talked about further in his swearing in this year. Again, it was another really nice family affair with his nieces leading the group in the Pledge of Allegiance, and just, you get to see the human side of the candidates now that they're finished on the campaign trail.
And finally, our newest row officer, Dave Sunday, who is now the Attorney General. Tell us about him.
Dave Sunday is the Attorney General, which is the highest law enforcement office in the state. This was previously held by Governor Josh Shapiro. They kind of set the priority for how law enforcement will be conducted throughout the state. Sunday specifically was coming from a district attorney role in York County, where he really prioritized trying to resolve some of the issues of the heroin epidemic. And he took a holistic approach to that, so involving not just law enforcement, but healthcare and social services, which has proven to be the model that the state has kind of taken on in general, as it doesn't seem like these are issues that we can really solve completely through law enforcement. And that's another thing that he talked about during his swearing in, was the current behavioral and mental health crises going on and how much that impacts public safety. So solving those problems ahead of time rather than through the justice system. I think he quoted a statistic that was about 50% of people who are in incarceration have mental health documented issues. So that's a priority for him. And he really emphasized both on the campaign trail and at his swearing in the importance of accountability and redemption. So he wants to both have that redemption and have the rehabilitative aspect that tends to be really strong on the Democratic side of emphasis. He really encourages that, but he wants to do it through accountability. So he's kind of reassuring his Republican audience about the role of law and order there.
Christina, thanks for joining us today. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com.